Hello and welcome to this latest edition of the Predictive World Forum. I'm your host. My name is Malay Upadhyay, Chief Growth and Operations Officer at SalesChoice, and I'm super excited to be here this morning. But before I explain to you why that is, let me tell you a bit about the Predictive World series in case you don't know. Over the years, we have been hosting numerous experts in the fields of AI and revenue growth across multiple webinars, podcasts, thought leadership papers, videos, you name it. And it's an excellent repository to learn about any of these topics and what's going on here and now, as well as best practices that have survived the length of time. So I invite you to visit saleschoice.com/resources to check these out. But in the meantime, our mandate here today is different. We have representation from our CEO, Dr. Cindy Gordon, as always, as well as someone from Norway. Klas Henning Pettersen is the CEO of NORA.ai, the Norwegian Artificial Intelligence Research Consortium. It's a collaboration, as you can read on your screen, between several institutions, 8 Norwegian universities, 3 university colleges, and 5 research institutes in the area of AI, machine learning, and robotics. So with that, let me welcome our esteemed guest today. Klas, pleasure to meet you.
Thank you. Pleasure to meet you.
We love having you here, and we can't wait to get started with the conversation. And to kick that off, let me turn things over to Cindy.
Thanks so much, Malay, and Klas, thanks so much for joining us here this morning. And I know it's the afternoon for you, before maybe a chance to have a nice cocktail or a cup of tea. But thank you so much for being here. Having been to your beautiful country for the first time in my life, I felt this incredible sense of, I call it integration of nature, culture, just great air. It was reminiscent for me in traveling in Western Canada, in our Rockies in Canada. And I think as you and I have discussed, pathways of how people decide to enter the field of AI is always an interesting journey. And having recently written the article and it's now out on our Forbes channel, I'd love for our audience to hear why you studied initial computational neurosciences and then your journey that led you to actually go deeper into the field and obviously take a bold move and apply for a CEO role, right? Because at that point you were very academically integrated. You were deep into the research side, and you could have certainly chosen another path to continue as a full-time academic. So I just love our audience to hear your story and your journey, but you're so graciously welcome today. And then we'll talk about NORA.ai, but let's hear about you first, Klas. Thanks.
Yes, thank you. And my background is I'm a physicist by training, and that was my master's within quantum mechanics and theory of relativity and the modern types of physics. But then after my master's, I went on traveling, as many at that time. This was the year of 2000, and Alex Garland had written his book, The Beach, some years before that. And I think actually this was exactly the time where the movie, The Beach, came out. And I was backpacking around in my backpack. I brought some books, and one book that made an impression was Roger Penrose's book, Shadows of the Mind. And Roger Penrose is a physicist of training, so it was a lot of physics, quantum mechanics, and everything that I knew well from before. But the book was really on consciousness, and this really kind of made me interest. That kind of made my interest within kind of trying to think about intelligence, consciousness, and obviously then the brain. So when I came back to Norway, I had already an agreement with Accenture, a consulting company, to start working there. But I really was then triggered and wanted to see if I could start doing more within the field of neuroscience. Of course, coming from physics, it's not that easy to turn into a neuroscientist. So it was obviously then using my toolbox as a physicist within neuroscience, which made me, I rather by a coincidence, I think I was contacted, or I contacted maybe a professor in Norway who was starting up a group within computational neuroscience. So using the tools from informatics, from mathematics, from physics to try to understand the basic circuits on how the brain works. And of course, so that was kind of my start and my entrance into the field of computational neuroscience then. And of course, again, studying our biological neural network from a theoretical perspective. And then the road into AI is not kind of that strange, maybe. So that came in the next step then.
You know, it's always intriguing, because actually I'm a former Accenture partner, and Malay also was at Accenture for a period, and that little nugget there. And you know, the following, I think one of the things with great leaders is that they listen to their intuition, and that they don't always take the paths that are immediately available, and there's many paths, but you know, you really followed your curiosity. And all of our research shows that curiosity is one of the, and having courage are two of the most significant attributes for CEOs, right? To really to know and to listen to that inner voice. Okay, so you pursued the focus in terms of neurosciences, and then obviously looking at neural networks and those constructs. Can you maybe just share a little bit about what it was like in the early days in your thesis? I'm just curious on the use case that you were maybe looking at that also created the, if you want to call it, the seedling. Probably a little bit of a story there to build on.
Yeah. Yes. So what happened then? My PhD was really about trying to fundamentally understand the basic circuits of perception, typically. So which could be visual perception, how the brain kind of goes from the input to the eye, and then in the end understanding the world and classifying what you're seeing, and so. But more fundamental was for me as a physicist to relate the activity in the brain, in the neurons, to what you could actually measure. And we had a lot of measurements with electrodes from within the brain, typically then of animals, but they, from time to time, typically before surgery, epileptic surgery, they also inject these electrodes into the human brain. And then you kind of get this rare opportunity to also record from human neurons. Which is very interesting, and at that time they also found this very interesting neuron. It was called the Jennifer Aniston neuron. So they had a patient which was into surgery, and when they showed him a lot of pictures with this electrode within his brain, they found one very specific neuron. It was only reacting to the pictures of Jennifer Aniston. They showed him extremely many pictures, and it was only Jennifer Aniston that actually triggered this neuron, which was also a quite nice, I think, illustration of the concept cells, or grandmother cells, it's called in the brain. So because it was not only one picture of Jennifer Aniston, it could be different types of pictures, and they found this for several kind of known famous humans then, and it could also be the name written and so on. So which kind of indicates that maybe the brain then have concept cells. So going also, I mean, and this is very similar to AI, that you have some primary layers where the brain typically reacts to just very basic stimuli, light dots, and then it builds gradually up throughout the layers of the brain, and which is similar for convolutional neural networks. So, and ends up with some kind of classification or reaction to some specific stimuli then. Yeah, so that was my PhD, and then I had all kinds of interesting interests and was following also AI from a bit from the sideline then. But what really caught my interest was when DeepMind produced these algorithms for AlphaGo, and specifically you had one kind of very famous match there between AlphaGo and Lee Sedol, which was the world champion in Go. And specifically game 2, move 37. It was kind of quite, from the human perspective, an absurd move there from AlphaGo. And this actually changed the Go theory a little bit, because the stone that was put on the board then was to a human, it looked weak. But as the kind of game progressed, AlphaGo won that game, and this move 37 was very important for the whole game, and it kind of changed, because I mean, these board games are more or less science. I mean, they have been played for centuries, and a lot of theory and so on. And this changed the theory a bit. And I just, as a concept, kind of humans making these algorithms that kind of then becomes so much better than us in board games, for example, and we again learning back from these algorithms. That's quite interesting, I think. And then specifically when also the next version, AlphaZero, which played chess, which I was even more into, and how that kind of just by self-playing evolved to beat not only the best humans, but also the best other computer algorithms. That made me think, and I realized that these algorithms, they can be used to so much more than only chess and Go. And this was actually for me quite important in my decision then to change fields from computational neuroscience and try to first apply more AI within my research, but then also ultimately to change fields into AI.
What a perfect example of computational neurosciences, but also the reflection, I would say the reflective dynamic, in the sense of rethinking what we already thought was right? And where AI moves are, to your point, making us think deeper and learn, right? And that kind of point of view isn't maybe something that we get out enough in the media, right, as well, in the sense that, you know, they can perform predictive decisions, but they also can inform us in our own resilience and our own, I mean, the way we think as humans, right? A very symbiotic relationship. Well, let's move to NORA.ai. Obviously, you know, Malay kind of stage set a little bit about the consortium and also the number of universities that I can only imagine how hard you work to bring different community stakeholders together. So just for our audience, where are you located? How many people or employees do you have? Just a little bit of sound bites about the organization and maybe the areas that you specialize in, so that our viewers, if they want to reach back to you, they've got some context. Thanks, Klas.
Yep. So NORA was established in 2018, or then 6 leading rectors and leaders from the institutes of Norway, they came together and formed NORA as an idea, collaboration, a consortium, research consortium, really, at that time. And the idea was clear. I mean, AI is so important, and we need to collaborate in Norway. Norway is not a big country. So that was the basic idea. And then I started in April 2019 as the CEO of this collaboration. And I was given I was quite free to form NORA, which was a very exciting opportunity for me. So the first thing was, I mean, to try to bridge and find good collaboration across Norway to really get most universities on board. And In Norway, we have only 10 universities. It's a small country, so 8 of them are partners of NORA, and also several university colleges, and the largest research institutes doing AI. So we pretty much cover most of Norway, and the idea was, of course, to collaborate then within research, but also within education and also innovation. And AI is obviously very innovation friendly, and we struggle, I think, in Europe with kind of going from research to innovation and deployment of AI into industry. So this is also something that we work quite intensively to try to do. And when it comes to areas we're working within, obviously these days we are really discussing GPT, I mean, and large language algorithms. And also discussion is, I mean, the Norwegian language is a small language. So should we, and it's also very similar to Swedish and Danish, the other Scandinavian languages. So should we establish a national language algorithm in Norway as a foundation model where also industry, startups, research could be done, an open model which kind of could be deployed by many. It should also include English. So this is one thing that we are now working on, trying to establish a really large project in Norway and to focus on large language models, and not only the models, but really the infrastructure on how to do this in a country like Norway. And then we definitely need collaboration, and we need kind of to bring all parts, all universities, all institutes that has competence within the field together, and this is what NORA basically is about, to bring all these parts together. And NORA as such, I mean, the secretariat is not large. We are 8 people here, situated in Oslo, the capital, but we use our partners quite a lot. So a lot of people. So we are the coordinating unit, but obviously we use not only kind of the research and professors and at the institutions, but also the administration. So in sum, we are quite large, taking all the partners into account. But yes, natural language processing, obviously, but also in Norway Health, we are also strong on health. We have a lot of register data, public health system, where we have, as an example, we have the cancer registry in Norway is complete with all cancers back until the mid-1950s, and this is quite exceptional. So we have a lot of, I think, quite exceptional data. So we are discussing now how to do this in a trustful and safe way, how to kind of build algorithms, and then of course we are talking about precision medicine, diagnostic tools, and so on, based on our data. So these are at least 2 fields where we are strong. We have also in Norway a strong tradition within energy and the energy sector. So this is obviously also important in Norway. Fisheries, I mean, fish farms and so on. And also they do a lot of interesting projects on AI, actually. So that's kind of the traditional kind of strong sectors in Norway.
Yeah, thank you. And what about the, I know you talked about the oil and gas. That was one thing I noticed when we were coming in on the cruise ship, you know, there were large, you know, oil and gas, you know, I don't know what you exactly call them, but in the ocean, but there were a few of them. So is the research there around climatic change? Is the research around how to extract with greater precision, identify risks, but just curious about the use cases in the oil and gas sector. Yeah. Obviously,
sorry, a lot is done on I mean, down to precision drilling by the use of AI, maintenance is very important. I think that's kind of maybe the two fields that I see. We have AI projects which are important within, at least. Yeah, so I would mention those two when it comes to oil and drilling. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I suspect the Canadian market would be really interested, with your oil and gas innovations. I know Malay, who was speaking earlier, was out in a conference that was lots of oil and gas expertise. We may want to pick up that conversation. There's certainly a lot of oil and gas in the Canadian infrastructure. So I've got clear sense. So you're I would say you're a change agent, a catalytic, visionary change agent, bringing a community and clusters together and really helping to spark that ecosystem. I have this image of this wonderful bumblebee and all these 8 bumblebees going and fertilizing, right? And obviously the success that you have is very much predicated on the collaborative DNA of all the various research institutions, but also I guess I'm curious in terms of the Norwegian government really being clear on how important to build that ecosystem, to build that up, that income revenue stream, right? And I love the fact that you're looking at taking your unique, precious heritage of your own native language and creating your own language model so that others can use, because if you don't, someone else might, you know what I mean? Like, it's also something that creates, I think a foundational perspective that the Norwegians know their language the best, right? And one thing I learned when I was in Norway, there's actually many different forms of the Norwegian language. It's not, it's not just one, lexicon. And I don't know how many there were, but it was certainly more than one.
Yeah, we have 2 written languages and also the Sami language. But in addition, I mean, we have a lot of dialects also, which makes this hard. But we have the 2 written languages, and I mean, this is not only about kind of syntax and the language; it's also about culture, right? So we have a different culture than what typically ChatGPT represents. So if I ask ChatGPT to plan my wedding, it will kind of give me a typical American wedding, right? But in Norway we do things differently, and maybe it also knows what the Norwegian wedding is like. But it's all this smaller things that kind of together makes up a culture, which is a bit lost within the big ChatGPT and the big American algorithms. So it's not only about kind of preserving language and making it kind of syntactically correct. It's also about culture and so building around the Norwegian culture.
And also, to your point, accuracy, right? Which is always one of the big concerns of the large language models and the data sets that they're trained on, and not really having the nuances that are deep in terms of specialized use case.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is about capturing kind of the knowledge and the culture and everything. So it could be, I think, viewed as project of national importance, which also makes it important and interesting for the government. And actually, I received an email just now that the Prime Minister of Norway will have an announcement in 1 week about AI, and it's following this and was invited to this press conference then. So it will be very exciting to see what the Prime Minister of Norway will announce actually.
Well, make sure you send us the press release so we can get a message out as well. That's wonderful. Like, that kind of national leadership representation is very important, which kind of leads us into the next question, right? Because obviously, we follow here the EU legislation and the progressiveness that it has. It has one of the more clear sets of precedents for potential legislation. They're not all ratified yet. I know they're still going through discourse, but I would love your perspective. Is Norway at the table in regards to the EU legislation? Any concerns that you have? Obviously, Canada, we've got something called ADA, which is part of one of the bills that's under review. Not quite there yet. We're still doing our reviews and ratifications. But I'd love your perspective on Norway's position with the pending EU AI legislation.
Yeah, of course, this is regulating is always a trade-off also with kind of the cost sometimes to I mean, hinder innovation. So it's always a trade-off between regulation and innovation force. And but I think in the EU also they intend to make kind of the regulation and making AI safe and ethical. Also kind of an sales argument in the sense that you should trust European AI. So that's also could potentially also become a benefit. I mean, for us, again, going back to, for example, the large language models, I mean, I as a representative for the universities and research institutes, I'm a little bit worried that it will hinder research. So that's kind of what I see as kind of the danger, that too much regulation also, if it affects kind of the university environment's open research, then it's for us could be very very hard. And in the EU, they have this different kind of levels of risk. For example, language algorithms will typically fall under high risk algorithms, which will then require quite a lot of kind of, yeah, we have to take care on how to do this, and also the researchers have maybe to get some training then in how to kind of approach the research questions, and researchers, as you know, they are maybe not always good at the bureaucracy and all those kind of aspects. So my fear is that it could hinder also research. It's still not kind of fully decided. I mean, this is now up for voting, and it is still a process that will take months and probably years before it's really finalized. But that's the worry. The other worry is, of course, that when if you are regulating too much the technology as such, and not the use of technology, then when the technology goes so fast, it's very hard to kind of foresee what will come, and it's very hard also to foresee how technology may be used or misused in the future. So also too much focus on the technology as such could also be a burden and very hard in a very fast moving world of AI. So this is also a worry, but I mean, Norway will obviously have to kind of deal with the AI Act, and I'm sure it could be also a benefit for EU to also kind of be very precise on that AI in European AI is safe, it should be trustworthy, and so on. So exciting, but a very hard task, I think, to regulate AI in that way.
Yeah, it's a really interesting perspective. I know the focus on the high impact applications is pretty significant, right? And the burden that you highlight is major. And I haven't seen a lot of clarity on the open research in reading the various legislative positions on use cases. They're hitting hard facial recognition, definitely hitting high impact applications that have personal related data. They are looking at least in Canada, third-party audits being a requirement. And again, then we have just more and more, infrastructure that's required, right? Software innovations to track, as well. And so that creates a boom in terms of some new, kind of audit tool, regulatory alignments, but then it increases headcount, and it definitely stalls innovation speed to market to learn, right? So it's going to be an interesting journey. The first time I've heard that you think the EU ratification won't be next year. I thought that maybe things would come to closure next year based on where they're just definitely ahead of the pack globally. Although, you know, California and New York state have now passed some laws that are pretty prohibitive. Got everybody jumping up and down. Interesting discussion. We could probably spend an entire day on this one. And I think, you know, I think everybody's hopefully got a good backdrop on NORA.ai. I think you've highlighted a number of exciting use cases that are being mobilized. Obviously, your government is making a release shortly in terms of probably, hopefully it's more funding for all of you. But I'd love to hear, you know, with the kind of speed that, with the market and the AI community, and there's never a dull moment, right? And you talked about generative AI and just the sheer, some of the gaps that they have within the large language models. But I'd love to know just how do you have fun? How do you unwind? Are you, when I was over there was skiing, there was people on their boats. What do you do just to have fun and, forget about all the complexities in AI?
First of all, I have 4 children, 4 boys aged between now 8 are actually 9 now, because we had the birthday this Monday, 9 and 15, so I typically, when I come into the door into the door at home, it's full chaos and 4 boys, and you are distracted in a good way. I think immediately you go in through the door, that door. But what has happened is that everyone are wrestling in a wrestling club, not at home. So wrestling has become my passion, I guess. But this has come late in my life, and actually through my oldest son. So it's nothing I did myself when I was young. But of course, I'm quite I'm a person. I'm not very good at just being passive. So I soon became the leader of that wrestling club that they all attend. I've been the leader of that wrestling club now for 6 years, which is I think really fun, and this is something I do for fun, right? But very different than being a leader of NORA and an artificial intelligence research consortium. It's all in Norway based on volunteer work, so you cannot really push people at all. You always have to motivate, which I also try to do in NORA, by the way. This is what we typically do in Norway. We try to motivate people, and but it has been a great journey, and this was started long before Elon Musk and Mark Zuckerberg made it cool to be an AI martial art actor, or so this is something I've done for 6 years, and which takes up my weekends. Typically we travel around the Nordic countries on wrestling tournaments with my children and other children, and just have a lot of fun, and also see how they the children, martial art is quite special. It's a lot of it's mentally quite, it could be tough, I guess, as being a young, being, for example, 10 years old, going out there by yourself on the wrestling mat. And I think it's a lot of learning, and the faces when they manage to do this, and whether they win or lose is not that important in the end, but just going out there in the next round also. It gives them self-confidence that I really like to see in the children. So I think so wrestling is what takes the most time. I mean, but this is obviously because of my family and having 4 children, 4 boys that all do wrestling.
What fun! Immediately what came to my mind was actually the correlation to the work you do, because I immediately thought of data wrangling. Now you're out there wrestling, looking at all the complexities and where things are coming from, whether it's a right foot, a left foot, an arm, or whatever. And in the whole world that we're in AI, there's so many complexities and different moves and precision, right? And so even though it's discipline, you might actually be training all of your children to join you in the AI field because they will have certainly built more resilience and dexterity. And I think what we constantly see in our clients here is the data quality, the data lineage, the data labeling, that whole data readiness phase and sustaining it, is always a major gap. But thanks for sharing that. I'd love to see some videos. I think it's so cool, and all the memories that you're creating as a family too. They're just precious. So now we're reaching near the end, Klas, to turn it back to Malay, but I'd like to close because I know you're very passionate. I saw that you shared that your community is also building out a NORA.ai startup ecosystem, because obviously commercializing from research is very important to allow GDP growth, also to create new jobs, to attract new people to your country, to grow. Norway is actually a very wealthy country, comparatively, in the sense of just a lot of the assets that you have, and so maybe just to share a little bit about young people and advice you have for them in pursuing a career in AI based on what you've learned.
Yeah, absolutely. And as you mentioned in NORA, we have a startup community working with more than 40 of the most exciting Norwegian AI startups. We have also research school educating, nationally research school educating. It's a graduate school then at the PhD level. So we do so much, and education and training and being among kind of the next generation AI scientists is extremely inspiring, I think. And I think the advice would be, I mean, don't be afraid to do things. Be a doer. Do your programming, learn the techniques, and also engage in the community, especially in Norway. Then Norway is a small country. It's relatively easy to kind of get into the community and know most of the community in a year or two. You will be quite well oriented within Norway and the Norwegian AI community. So get into the technical details. Do your workouts similar to wrestling. You need to really be doing the techniques, but then also go into the community, and maybe the most important thing, I think, find a good mentor. So this has been crucial to me. I had a really good PhD supervisor, which has also been a mentor for me ever since. So try to find a good mentor, and also a message to people at my age and the professors out there and others in industry: be a good mentor. This is maybe the most important take-home message. Finding a good mentor, being a good mentor, this is how the world moves forward, I think.
Thank you so much, Klas, for the inspiring conversation. I'm going to turn it back to my partner, Malay, to close us out, but thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you indeed. We started off with computational neurosciences, and that's always exciting, but we ended with some really, really hard-hitting words there, Klas. Completely agreed, and I hope everyone who is listening does as well. Be a mentor. Don't be scared of diving into the techniques, the technicalities. At the end of it, as Cindy mentioned, visionary, change agent, and a wrestling enthusiast. Well, Klas, it was an absolute pleasure having you with us. To our audience, if you would like to contact Klas, you can do it at his email on your screen here. And of course, you can go and check out more about NORA at NORA.ai or its LinkedIn page. Don't hesitate to reach out. This is a promising initiative. And with that, we come to a conclusion now. At the end of it, I would like to invite you back to saleschoice.com/resources. That's where you'll find this podcast recording as well as all our previous ones. And I hope you enjoyed the session today, and I hope you enjoyed the others too. Klas, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.